Hi, everybody. This is Julia Dunleavy with the Maine Playweek. This is a solo episode. Just me, no Nate this week. I'm so sorry. We wanted to pop into your podcast feeds to talk about Oscar season. It feels like it's been Oscar season for a while now. Maybe it's just like it's dark, it's cold, it's all we have to think about, honestly, that isn't like a terrible thing happening in the world. But maybe you're just sort of like getting into Oscars mode just now. Reminder, the ceremony is on March 15th, Sunday, March 15th. And so if you're planning your own Oscar party, that's the date to look at. Unfortunately, it is a Sunday. It is a school night or a work night. But, you know, that's what your sick time is for, right? And a little plug up top for our new merch collection, the Golden Statue Collection. This is a merch collection that is celebrating the Oscars and all the nominees. So you can find that at shop.themaineplayweek.com. And at the end of the episode, I'll describe a little bit more about the individual t-shirts that we've designed. So I'm not going to talk about the heavy hitters of the Oscars for this episode. I'm going to talk about Oscar nominees that you probably didn't see in theaters. So if you subscribe to our newsletter, you may have already seen our written piece about this, Oscar nominees you probably didn't see in theaters. If you don't subscribe to our newsletter, you definitely should. It's weekly recommendations of films showing in theaters in Maine, and also some reviews and interviews and think pieces. So not every Oscar nominee gets the kind of treatment that Marty Supreme did, where Timothée Chalamet is like standing on top of the Las Vegas Sphere and like yelling about Marty Supreme Christmas Day. You know, a lot of nominees, especially usually documentaries and animated films, are just like really don't get the kind of publicity or the kind of like press that you would think an Oscar nominee would get. You know, these are films that are nominated for, you know, the most prestigious award in their industry. And some of them like don't even really have theatrical distribution. So I'm going to talk about stuff that you may not have been aware of. Maybe you didn't even know it was in theaters. And actually, some of these films are still playing in theaters, so you can actually see them, which is really great. And I'm going to save, I think, my favorite film that I did not see in theaters for last. And I'm wondering if you will agree with me on that one. So the first film I want to talk about is If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. This one is nominated for Best Actress. Rose Byrne is the lead actress, and she's nominated for Best Actress. She's going head to head with Jessie Buckley of Hamnet. And they're actually like kind of similar films in a lot of ways. How to like make meaning of yourself in this like crazy world of being a parent. This one came out last December. It played at the PMA and potentially nowhere else. It may have played at MFC. This is just a disclaimer for this whole episode. I don't have a perfect memory of which films played at which theaters, and oftentimes it was just for like maybe a one-off or like just a week. And so the my historical memory of where these films played is not perfect. So just a disclaimer. So If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Was an A24 film. And, you know, you might think of A24 as like, these are like the super hyped up, like splashy films, edgy films, and they are. But A24 has a lot going on. They always have a lot of films going on. And so this was December, so it was kind of around the same time as Marty Supreme. So understandably, you know, as the distributor, A24 is basically putting more, this is my hunch, take it or leave it, A24 is spending more money on marketing for Marty Supreme because they know that Timothée Chalamet is going to be a contender for Best Actor, and the film is going to be a contender for Best Picture. And they don't necessarily think of If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You as like their top Oscar awards contender. So it's like you only have so many marketing dollars and you only have so many screens that you can distribute your film on. And so some theaters are like, well, we can play Marty Supreme and we want to play Marty Supreme, but we can't play two A24 films at the same time because that's maybe not fair to their relationships to other distributors. And so, you end up getting Marty Supreme for a few weeks, and maybe if you have room, you play If I Had Legs I'd Kick You for like a week. But, it's a little bit of a harder film to market. It's kind of like, it's artsy, it's weird, it's edgy. Rose Byrne is, of course, very talented and famous actress, but maybe not the household name that Timothée Chalamet is. What I'll say about this film is that it was really good. I watched it last night, actually, on streaming, and I really wish that I had seen it in theaters, because I think especially like the big hole in the ceiling, if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. The big hole in her ceiling, like that would have looked so cool on the big screen. And I'm sad that I was just watching it in my living room. But it was still a really, really good film, and you should definitely see it if you haven't. So the next film I want to talk about is Come See Me in the Good Light, which was nominated for Best Documentary Feature. This is the documentary released by Apple. It's about the Maine-born poet and activist Andrea Gibson. There's a lot of love for Andrea Gibson around Maine, and it did play at several different theaters. I think it played at MFC, potentially the Gem in Bethel. I think the PMA. The first screening in Maine was when it was still in its festival circuit. It actually played at the Camden International Film Festival, and we did write a little review of it by one of our contributors, Katie Lowe. Highly recommend reading that piece. It was one of our most read pieces of 2025. Katie does a really good job in talking about like how heartbreaking the film is and how well made the film is. So this one didn't really get a wide theatrical release because it's a documentary. And unfortunately, documentaries have just not gotten the kind of chance in theaters in person like other genres do. Maybe studios and distributors think that people won't show up for documentaries. And, that may be true for some documentaries, but I think it was clear that at least for this film, I think it actually did really well in its theatrical screenings in Maine. And so maybe this is something that we as Maine moviegoers can change the narrative, like we can say, no, like we really value the in-person experience of documentaries. We want to see documentaries in theaters. We want to see them with other people. Also, we are in luck with Come See Me in the Good Light. It is playing again at PMA Films in Portland on February 28th or March 6th. It's going to be great, and we're going to cry, obviously. Okay, so this next one absolutely came out of left field. When the nominees came out, I had never heard of this film. I didn't know what they were talking about. I was like, what's happening? And for context, I work in theatrical film booking, and so most of these nominees we were expecting. We were like, okay, yes, like Hamnet is going to be nominated. This one had never heard of it. It's called Cutting Through Rocks. It was nominated for Best Documentary Feature. It's about a motorcycle riding feminist councilwoman in Iran, and it's all about her like riding her motorcycle around and empowering young women. I mean, like, I wish that I had seen this in theaters, but unfortunately, it just never got an actual theatrical distributor, like a traditional theatrical distributor. And so it wasn't really playing anywhere outside of New York or LA. This is a big kudos to the film programmer at Space Gallery in Portland, Greg Jamie. So Greg actually reached out directly to the production team and booked this film for a screening at Space in Portland on March 11th. So this is probably your only chance to see this film. There's no indication that it's actually going to be on streaming or video on demand because, again, it's not with a traditional distributor. So literally this might be your only time to watch it. Okay, this is the last Oscar nominee that you probably didn't see in theaters. This one is truly the one that got away for me. Train Dreams. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Original Song. You might remember that Nate and I talked about Train Dreams a couple episodes ago, and he actually didn't realize that it ever had a theatrical release. So if you didn't know that this film was actually in theaters, you're not to blame. Like, it was in theaters for maybe a hot minute, and then it was gone. And then it was on Netflix. So just a little bit about this film. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous story. It's adapted from a novella. It's about a logger and railroad worker in the Pacific Northwest in sort of like mid 1900s. And it's basically a meditation on grief and aging and how the world kind of like grows along with you and how technology changes throughout the decades. It's not like a big, spectacle movie. It's not like huge stars. It's just like a really like a very like touching, intimate movie that is just shot so beautifully. Like every single frame of this film is like an absolute masterpiece. And I am so mad I did not see this in theaters. I think it played at the Maine Film Center in Waterville. If it played anywhere else, I don't know or I can't remember. So kudos to the Maine Film Center for booking this for, the 2 weeks that it had its theatrical window. I could go off on a tangent about Netflix and Netflix's CEO, Ted Sarandos, and what he said about movie theaters. But basically what you need to know is that films distributed by Netflix get usually a 14-day theatrical window. So that's like between the time when it first gets into theaters and when it drops on Netflix. So theaters basically have 2 weeks to kind of capitalize on the excitement around these films. And then they're on Netflix, the most subscribed to streaming platform in the world, and they're available for anyone to watch at home. So Netflix films are not really set up for success in movie theaters, unfortunately. But Netflix tends to produce some really, really good films, including Train Dreams. And so it makes me a little mad that this one didn't have more of an extended theatrical run. But of course, it's not based on existing IP. It's not a superhero movie. It's not dazzling special effects. It's not Leonardo DiCaprio. It's not a film that studios are going to look at and be like, oh yeah, people are going to show up to the movie theater for that film. It's just not. And unfortunately, that's just how studios think. So there you go. These are the Oscar nominees you probably didn't see in theaters. If you did see any of these in theaters, consider yourself lucky. And I think the whole point of the Maine Playweek talking about these films is that, studios don't always believe in these kinds of films. They think they're not going to draw audiences to the movie theater, but we really think that these films really deserved a theatrical audience. And so if you are interested in getting to these kinds of films and really being there at the theater when they're playing and knowing exactly when they're playing and for how long they're playing, that's kind of what we're all about. We want to empower the main moviegoer to actually make those choices for themselves and not just only have the choice oh, well, I guess I'll just watch it on Netflix, because we deserve that choice. We deserve the choice to see it in theaters or not. Also, we are super excited to announce our Golden Statue merch collection. So we had this idea to basically use the title font of a bunch of different Oscar nominees and write the Maine Playweek in that font and put it on a t-shirt. So kind of a simple idea, but the designs that our head of design, Charlie Beck, has cooked up are really great. We've got a shirt with the font for Train Dreams and Hamnet because the fonts were sort of similar. We're calling it Ham Dreams. We've got one for The Secret Agent. It's called Spy. We've got the really cool begonia font. We've got Sentimental Value, just a beautiful, plain old sans serif font. We've got my favorite film of 2025, one battle after another. Imagine those sort of like rough block letters saying the Maine Playweek. Perfect for your Oscar party. And we've also got Marty Supreme, of course, the big old block letters. So you can find those on shop.themaineplayweek.com. They're all $25 plus shipping and handling. And yeah, get one now and wear it to your Oscar party. That's it for the Maine Pod Week this time. Follow us on Instagram at the Maine Playweek. Subscribe to our Substack, themaineplayweek.substack.com. And also, if you like this podcast, you should recommend it to a friend. And if that friend lives in Maine, even better. But if not, and they just want to listen to two people in Maine talk about movies, that's cool too. Love that. We'll see you at the movies.
The Maine Pod Week is hosted by Nate Stevenson and Julia Dunleavy, and edited and produced by Nate Stevenson. Social media video is produced by Nick Brown, and music is created by Peter Coleman. The podcast is a project of the Maine Playweek, a new media publication covering the moviegoing experience here in Maine. You can support our coverage financially by becoming a paid subscriber to our Substack at themaineplayweek.substack.com/subscribe. Send your ideas, questions, or other musings to hello@themaineplayweek.com, and follow us at The Maine Playweek on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Substack. Learn more at themaineplayweek.com. But most importantly, tell your movie-loving friends that we're here, and we'll see you at the cinema.